Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Senator Pat Gallivan, Senator Dave Valesky. I was going to say Carlucci this way. Senator Kathy Marcione, Senator Dave
bookended by
Carlucci. Yeah. Representing the Senate Majority Coalition, and it's very significant that we worked on this project together, and this is done in a bipartisan manner. Last June, many of you may remember, the Senate Majority Coalition began a process to reduce the regulatory burden in New York State. In addition to comprehensive legislation that was passed last June and subsequent significant outreach throughout the state, our bipartisan commission conducted 9 industry-specific hearings across the state in an effort to hear directly from business owners, entrepreneurs, and industry experts about the regulatory environment in New York State, to learn about the specific regulations negatively impacting their businesses and potential ways to make New York more hospitable to private sector job creation. The findings report that we are releasing today represents the culmination of this process and includes testimony from over 100 individuals that participated in one of the 9 forums or took the time to submit written testimony to the Commission. During the course of this bipartisan fact-finding effort, several common issues emerged as seemingly inherent problems within the state's regulatory structure and bureaucracy, big picture items, as opposed to the specific regulations. These include agencies should provide guidance in navigating complex regulations, which often can be more burdensome than complying with the regulation itself. Agencies should work cooperatively with businesses towards compliance rather than immediately penalizing them. Agencies should be held accountable to timely respond to permit, license, and grant applications, as well as inquiries from various businesses. Agencies should develop fair and predictable regulations. Commissioners should be held accountable to conduct an agency-by-agency review of all regulations as is currently required by law. Agencies should communicate to avoid conflicting regulatory interpretations, and the legislature should strengthen the State Administrative Procedure Act. While addressing these big picture ideas are important in improving New York State's regulatory environment, identifying specific regulations are just as important and will provide the logical starting point for comprehensive reform. The Senate Majority Coalition decided that the best way to identify individual regulatory burdens was to focus on specific industries vital to regional and statewide economic growth. This process helped to identify 2,219 specific rules, regulations, and practices that put New York's businesses at a competitive disadvantage. Each specific burden corresponds to a specific regulation or section of law or a practice of a state agency that has the effect of a regulation or statute in that it creates a burden on business as if it were validly enacted law or rule. Unfortunately, no one has yet been able to put a price tag on the total economic cost of New York's more than 750,000 regulations. However, a 2009 study found that regulations in California, a state with a similarly burdensome regulatory regime, cost their economy $493 billion annually, resulting in a loss of 3.8 million jobs and reducing business tax receipts by over $16 billion. This report is a continuation of efforts begun last year, and the Senate Majority Coalition hopes it'll serve as a blueprint in working with Governor Andrew Cuomo towards his stated goal, consistent with ours, of reducing the regulatory burden for job creators in New York State and achieving substantive regulatory reform this legislative session.